Chapter 7 Funeral Magic. It was 2 days later that the funeral of old Da Henderson took place, and he was a man who had been so popular that this was a great occasion. All the men in Black Ness came home from the half that day. There was a tremendous gathering of other mourners as well, and in spite of their own grief for old Da, the Hendersons were pleased by such respect. They were also determined to carry out all the old funeral customs of the island the way old Da would have wanted them to do. And so, just before they were all about to start for the burying grounds, Peter came out of the house carrying the straw from the mattress of old Da's bed. The minister was out there with his Bible under his arm. All the mourners stood silently gathered with the coffin in their midst. Robbie was waiting with a lit torch in his hand, and when his father had set the straw on the ground, he thrust the torch into the heart of it. Now this custom of burning the bed straw of a dead man, the lick straw, as it was called, was a very ancient custom on the island. It was also very superstitious, for everyone there believed that a footprint could sometimes be seen in the ashes of the lick straw, and this footprint would show which member of the dead man's family would be next to die. Naturally enough, therefore, the minister would have nothing to do with such a custom, which he thought was very unchristian. He stood well back from the fire to show his disapproval of it, and since Finlayson was a stranger to the island and its customs, he also took care to stand back from the fire. Everyone else, however, got as close as they could to it, and every eye was fastened intently on the flames. For a few moments the straw burned fiercely, then the flames sank and dwindled back quickly to nothing more than a lick of fire. A thin column of smoke rose from the smoldering ashes, drifting and slowly unwinding in the still summer air. But now the mourners were no longer silent, for they could see a bird winging heavily towards this smoke, a black bird, like a crow, but much bigger than a crow. It was a raven, the bird of ill omen, the bird with the hoarse and arrogant cry that foretells death, and the mourners muttered fearfully to one another at its approach. They muttered again as it pitched down on the roof of the Hendersons' house, and standing by with a face as sour as he had been sucking a lemon, the minister opened his Bible to show how much he disapproved of this further show of superstition. The Henderson family, however, did not hear the mourners, and they did not heed the minister, for now the ash was settling, soft and gray, with the last trace of red gone from it. And there, in the middle of all the little mounds and hollows of its final pattern, was the clearly marked shape of a footprint. The shape was a small and neat one, the print of a girl's shoe, and staring at it like someone in a dream, Elspeth recognized it for her own. Slowly she lifted one foot and advanced it towards the ashes. Carefully she set the foot down again, and the sole of her shoe fitted perfectly into the shape of the print. Janet went sheet white at this, for it was not in the natural order of things, of course, that anyone so young as Elspeth should be the next in the family to die. Peter and Nicol Anderson were also much shaken by this turn of events, and each of them put a hand to draw Elspeth hastily back from the ash. "It can't be," said Janet then, staring in dismay at Peter as she spoke. "Elspeth's so much younger than either of us. It can't be her turn next." This was altogether too much for Elspeth, who gave a little cry and slid in a dead faint to the ground. "Now look what you've done," said Nickel in dismay, and Janet shouted, "Then help me to undo it, will you? And instead of just standing there like a great stupid gawk." As usual with men in such situations, however, Nickel had no idea at all in his head. Peter was equally useless, and seizing hold of Robbie, Janet commanded, "Off to the house with you, and get some water." Then, shoving Robbie away from her, she got down on her knees beside Elspeth. Robbie's mind was all in a daze over what had happened, but he took off instantly all the same, and was back in less than a minute with a jug of water in his hand. The situation had changed, however, even in that short time, for now it was Nickel who knelt beside Elspeth. Elspeth herself had come round from her faint, and Nickel was raising her from the ground. Finlayson had stepped forward to help him with this, and the minister was stalking back and forth, raging at everyone. "No one with any sense would believe such superstitious nonsense," he shouted. And Nickel said awkwardly, "Of course, minister, of course, and Elspeth will be fine now." Elspeth, however, was still far from fine, and she could see very well the doubt and fear on the faces of those around her. Piteously, she glanced around for further comfort and realized that Finlayson was smiling at her. "Do you think the minister is right?" she asked him, and cheerfully he told her, "I'll tell you what I think. You will live to wed the man of your choice, and you will be rich when you wed. And what is more, you will be beautiful to the end of your days." "Thank heaven for one man with common sense," the minister exclaimed. But it flashed across Robbie's mind then that Elspeth would not be rich if she married Nickel Anderson. Nickel had the same thought, it seemed, for he flushed to the roots of his red hair as Finlayson spoke, and tried to draw Elspeth back towards himself. Elspeth had listened eagerly to Finlayson's words, however, and now, with a flush of hope on her face, she brushed Nickel's hand away. "Is it truly how it will be?" she asked Finlayson. "Are you sure of that?" Finlayson fixed her gaze with his own bright, dark brown one. "As sure as anyone can be," he told her. And the minister echoed, "Of course he's sure. And now, for goodness' sake, lassie, let him take you back to the house to have a rest while we get on with the real business of the day." "I'll take her," said Nickel, looking annoyed at this. "You will not," the minister told him, glaringly. "He is not a member of my parish, but you are, and you will stay here with the rest to listen to what I have to say." Nickel scowled at this, but dared not disobey, and while Finlayson took Elspeth off, talking soothingly to her all the while, the minister gave everyone a fierce lecture on the folly of letting superstition rule their lives. So the whole business of the lick straw came to an end, with everyone feeling so shamed by the panic it had caused that they were only too anxious to put it all behind them. Besides which, there was something else happened that day which very quickly took the thoughts of the Henderson family to quite another direction. It was an hour or so after the funeral that this second event took place. The minister had gone walking off with his Bible under his arm, and a face as sour as ever. The mourners had all scattered to their homes. The sixereens of the men who had come home from the half for the funeral had sailed away out of the Voe, and the only boat left drawn up on the shingle was Peter's sixereen. It was to make sure Elspeth had recovered from her fright that Peter had lingered. But, as it happened, he need not have bothered about this. Elspeth was so much herself when they got back to the house that she had made tea for everyone. And so now Peter and his crew were sitting around in the butt end having a last cup of this tea and a last talk about old Da before they took to their departure. Finlayson was there too, of course, but he sat in a far corner, keeping himself to himself as usual. Robbie was another who took no part in this last talk, since he had gone to the window to watch the seals in the Vaux while he thought his own thoughts about old Da. It was still Robbie, however, who brought the conversation to an end, for his view from the window showed him a boat coming swiftly into the Vaux, and as this boat came closer to the shore, he realized something that sent a great shrill of alarm through him. Quickly he swung round from the window and shouted above the sound of all the others in the room, "Da, listen! There's a boat coming into the Vaux, and I think it's the press gang that's in it." Now this was very bad news. Very, very bad news indeed. For the press gang was the gang that captured men for forced service in the Navy. And this was a fate to be dreaded in those days when life aboard a naval ship was such a hard and brutal affair. Moreover, with all the men of the islands being naturally good seamen, the press gang was especially active there. And so, to every man in the room then, Robbie's shout was a warning of desperate and immediate danger.